The day the galaxy realized what a human professional army truly is part. The conquered of spheres had watched humanity for decades, and they had made up their minds long ago. Humans were loud, messy, and emotional. Their early radio signals were full of music, arguments, and strange stories about love and war. When the first human ships finally left their solar system, they were slow, clunky, and barely armed. The conquered saw them as children playing with tools they did not understand. They were not a threat. They were not even worth serious attention. That belief held strong until the day the Krell came to Epsilon Kappa. Epsilon Kappa was a small human colony on the edge of known space. It had no strategic value, no rare minerals, no ancient ruins. It was just a place where people grew food, raised families, and tried to build a quiet life under twin suns. The colony's only defense was a handful of outdated patrol drones and a single communications array that could send a distress signal, if it survived long enough. The Krell did not believe in warnings. They arrived without announcement, their jagged warships tearing through the upper atmosphere like knives through silk. Within minutes, plasma fire rained down on the main settlement. Buildings melted. Fields burned. The sky turned red with smoke and ash. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, the humans responded with eerie calm. Emergency sirens wailed, yes, but people moved quickly and quietly to underground shelters. Families followed practice drills. Medics set up triage zones and reinforced tunnels. And from the colony's command bunker, a voice cut through the chaos on every open channel. Not shouting, not begging, just stating facts. This is Colonel Daniel Pike of the United Earth Defense Command. Epsilon Kappa is under attack by unknown hostile forces. We are initiating Protocol Iron Shield. All non-combatants proceed to designated evacuation points. All military personnel, report to rally coordinates Alpha through Echo. The message repeated every 30 seconds, steady as a heartbeat. Across the sector, the Concord listened. Their listening posts had picked up the distress call, and now their observation ships hovered at a safe distance, watching through long-range sensors. They expected to see humans running, screaming, maybe firing a few desperate shots before being crushed. That was how most young species reacted to the Krell. What they saw instead made no sense. Within 2 hours of the first strike, human warships dropped out of warp just beyond the system's asteroid belt. Not dozens, just 6. Sleek, gray, and utterly unadorned. No glowing symbols, no proud banners, not even names painted on their hulls. They moved in perfect formation, silent and precise. From those ships, smaller craft launched, drop pods streaking toward the planet's surface like falling stars. At the same time, orbital defense platforms unfolded from cargo bays, locking into position around Epsilon Kappa with mechanical grace. Within minutes, a defensive net was active, intercepting incoming Krell missiles before they could hit the ground. On the surface, soldiers emerged from the pods, not with wild cries, but with quiet efficiency. They wore matte black armor that absorbed light, and their movements were smooth, practiced. No one gave speeches. No one yelled about honor or vengeance. They simply took up positions, checked their weapons, and began coordinating with the colony's surviving militia. Captain Lisa Morgan led the ground team assigned to Sector 3, the hardest-hit area. She was in her early 30s with short brown hair and eyes that missed nothing. She moved through the ruined streets like a ghost, her squad fanning out behind her in perfect silence. When a Krell scout patrol rounded a corner, they never saw the humans coming. 3 quick shots, suppressed, precise, and the scouts dropped without a sound. Morgan didn't pause. She signaled her team to move on. High above, aboard the lead human vessel, the UF Vanguard, Colonel Pike stood on the command deck, arms folded, watching tactical displays. His face showed no emotion. Around him, officers spoke in low, calm voices, reporting updates. Damage to orbital grid minimal. Civilian evacuation 78% complete. Enemy fleet movements predictable. A Concord liaison officer, a slender being named Virel with silver skin and large dark eyes, floated nearby, clearly uneasy. "Colonel," Virel said, voice trembling slightly, "the Concord offers its support. We can send reinforcements, medical teams, even diplomatic mediators if—" Pike turned slowly. "We don't need mediators," he said. His voice was quiet but firm. "The Krell don't negotiate. They consume. And right now they've bitten off more than they can chew." Virel blinked. But your forces are so few. The Krell have hundreds of warships. Pike looked back at the display. Numbers don't win wars. Discipline does. Training does. Knowing your job and doing it no matter what. Down on the planet, Morgan's team reached a collapsed school. Sensors showed life signs inside. Without hesitation, 2 engineers moved forward, placing shaped charges on key support beams. A soft thump and a clean opening appeared. Medics rushed in, pulling out children and teachers, checking vitals, tagging the injured with colored markers. Every action was smooth, rehearsed, efficient. One little boy clung to a medic's arm, tears streaking through the dust on his face. "Are the monsters gone?" he whispered. The medic knelt, adjusted his helmet so the boy could see his eyes, and said, "Not yet, but we're here now." Back in orbit, the Krell commander grew frustrated. His scan showed the human defenses hardening by the minute. Their ships weren't charging in blindly, they were holding position, waiting, watching. It was like trying to punch a shadow. He ordered a full assault. The human fleet did not flinch. As the Krell ship surged forward, the humans activated something the Conquered had never seen before. A network of drone satellites that swarmed like angry insects, jamming sensors, blinding targeting systems, and feeding false data to enemy computers. Within seconds, the Krell formation fell into chaos. Then the humans struck, not with overwhelming force, but with surgical precision. Missiles lanced out, not at hulls, but at engine nacelles and weapon mounts. Fighters darted in, fired, and vanished before the Krell could track them. It was less like a battle and more like a demonstration. Cold, clean, and utterly professional. Varel watched from the observation deck, stunned. "They're not fighting like warriors," he murmured to himself. "They're fighting like accountants." And in a way, he was right. To the humans, this wasn't about rage or glory. It was about solving a problem. The Krell were a threat. The threat needed to be neutralized. Every decision, every movement, every shot fired was part of that solution. By the end of the first day, the Krell had lost 12 ships. The humans had lost none. And the galaxy, for the first time, began to wonder if they had been wrong about humanity all along. The day the galaxy realized what a human professional army truly is, Part 2 morning came to Epsilon Kappa wrapped in smoke and silence. The twin suns rose over broken buildings and scorched fields, casting long shadows across streets that had once been full of children and market carts. Now only the soft hum of human equipment broke the stillness. Soldiers moved like ghosts through the ruins, checking corners, resetting sensors, and reloading weapons with quiet focus. Captain Lisa Morgan crouched behind a collapsed wall, scanning the street ahead with thermal goggles. Her squad was small, just 8 soldiers, but they held a full city block. They had done it not by shouting or charging, but by using every piece of cover, every scrap of rubble, and every second of darkness to their advantage. The Krell expected noise. Humans gave them silence, a soft tap on her shoulder. One of her soldiers, a young man named Kyle, pointed to a flicker on his wrist display. Heat signature. Moving fast. Morgan nodded and raised 2 fingers. 2 enemies. She signaled for a pincer move. Without a word, half her team slipped left through a shattered storefront, the other half right through a drainage tunnel. Minutes later, 2 muffled thuds echoed from the next block. The heat signatures vanished. Morgan didn't smile. She didn't even pause. She just tapped her earpiece. Clear in Sector 3 Gamma. Moving to Checkpoint 4. High above, aboard the UF Vanguard, Colonel Daniel Pike reviewed damage reports. The Krell had pulled back overnight, licking their wounds. But Pike knew they would return. They always did. What mattered now was how much ground the humans could hold, and how many civilians they could save before the next wave hit. A soft chime sounded. A new face appeared on the main display, a Conquered observer named Tail. She was young for her species, with smooth blue skin and eyes that darted nervously. "Colonel," she began, "the Conquered Council requests an update. They want to understand your strategy." Pike didn't look up. "Our strategy is to keep the Krell off the planet until every civilian is evacuated." "But how?" Tile pressed. "You have so few troops. The Krell outnumber you 10 to 1. Pike finally turned. "Numbers don't matter if you're always 1 step ahead. We don't wait for them to attack. We make them walk into traps they don't see coming." Tile hesitated. "And if they adapt?" "Then we adapt faster." Down on the surface, Morgan's team reached a medical outpost hidden beneath a ruined church. Inside, human medics worked side by side with local volunteers, stitching wounds, setting bones, and filtering contaminated water. In one corner, a Krell prisoner sat bound but unharmed. His armor had been removed and a bandage wrapped his leg. A medic was checking his pulse. Tael, who had come down to observe, stared in disbelief. "You're treating a Krell?" Morgan wiped sweat from her brow. He surrendered. "Protocol says we treat all wounded, enemy or not. But they burned your cities. They killed your people." Morgan looked at her, calm but firm. "Yeah. And if we start torturing prisoners, we become just like them. We're not here to be monsters. We're here to do a job." Tael had no answer. She watched as the medic gave the Krell a painkiller and offered him water. The alien grunted, confused. He had expected screams, chains, maybe death, not care. Later that day, the Krell returned. This time they sent their elite, Shock Claws, towering, muscle-bound warriors with reinforced bone plates and glowing red eyes. They moved like storms, smashing through walls, roaring challenges into the empty streets. They wanted fear. They wanted chaos. What they got was silence. Morgan's team had vanished. The streets were empty. The only sound was the wind whistling through broken windows. The Shock Claws spread out, confused. Then the first explosion hit. A buried charge under the road, timed to go off when the largest group crossed. 2 Shock Claws went down, legs shattered. Before the others could react, drones buzzed overhead, dropping flashbang grenades that blinded and deafened. From rooftops, human snipers fired armor-piercing rounds into joints and neck seals. From alleys, soldiers with rail rifles picked off stragglers one by one. It wasn't a battle, it was a lesson. By sunset, all 12 Shock Claws were dead. Human losses, 0. Back at command, Morgan filed her after-action report. Every detail, enemy movements, weapon effectiveness, terrain advantages, was logged, analyzed, and sent up the chain. Within the hour, updated tactics were pushed to every squad on the planet. Tael watched this process with growing unease. "You treat war like math," she said quietly. Morgan shrugged. "War is math. Time, distance, firepower, morale. If you get the numbers right, you win." That night, as rain began to fall, the humans kept working. Engineers turned a collapsed parking garage into a forward base. Cooks served hot meals from mobile kitchens. Soldiers cleaned their weapons, checked comms, and took short rotating naps. No one complained. No one boasted. They just prepared for tomorrow. Tael sat with Morgan on a broken bench, watching the rain. "On my world," she said, "warriors sing songs before battle. They paint their faces. They speak of honor and ancestors." Morgan sipped from a canteen. "We used to do that too. A long time ago. Then we learned that songs don't stop bullets. Paint doesn't stop plasma fire. The only thing that matters is whether you know your job, and whether you do it right." Tael looked at the soldiers around her. They weren't heroes in the old sense. They weren't loud or flashy, but they were everywhere, calm, capable, and utterly relentless. She thought of the Krell who fought with rage and pride. And she thought of these humans who fought with discipline and silence. For the first time, she understood why the Krell were losing. It wasn't about weapons or ships. It was about mindset. The Krell saw war as a test of strength. The humans saw it as a problem to be solved. And problems, when faced by professionals, always had solutions. As the rain fell harder, Morgan stood up. "Get some rest," she told Tael. "Tomorrow will be worse." Then she walked back into the dark, checking her rifle one last time before the next shift began. The day the galaxy realized what a human professional army truly is part. 3 the Krell High Warlord sat in the command chamber of his flagship, fists clenched so tight his claws drew blood. His Shock Claws, his finest warriors, had been wiped out without a single human life lost. The reports made no sense. No war cries. No grand charges. Just silence, then death. He slammed his fist on the console. "They hide like rats," he growled. "Send the burn fleet. Scorch the planet clean." Orders went out across the Krell Armada. Dozens of heavy bombardment cruisers powered up their plasma cores. They would not waste time on ground fights. They would erase the city from orbit. Let the humans burn in their holes. But the humans had already planned for this. Days earlier, as soon as the first Krell ships appeared, Colonel Daniel Pike had ordered a full civilian evacuation. Not just the obvious shelters. Every home, every shop, every school had been quietly emptied under cover of night. What looked like a city full of people was now a shell. Empty buildings, fake heat signatures, dummy radio chatter, All of it designed to make the Krell think the prize was still there. Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the ruins of what had once been the Central Plaza. Her squad was gone, reassigned to secure the last evacuation shuttles. She was alone now, watching the sky. Above, the Krell fleet gathered like storm clouds. She tapped her wristcom. "Pike, they're lining up for bombardment." "Good," came the reply. "Let them," Morgan smiled faintly. Then she turned and walked away, vanishing into a maintenance tunnel that led deep underground. Minutes later, the Krell fired. Plasma bolts the size of houses slammed into the city. Stone melted, metal vaporized, fires erupted in every street. From orbit, it looked like total destruction. The Krell roared in triumph, but on the ground, nothing of value remained, and the humans were not done. As the bombardment raged, hidden launch bays beneath the city opened. Not with soldiers, but with machines. Small, fast drones shot into the sky not to attack, but to blind. They released clouds of reflective chaff and electronic noise, scrambling Krell targeting systems. At the same time, buried sensor arrays fed false data to enemy scanners, making it seem like the city was still full of life, and full of targets worth hitting. The Krell kept firing, wasting precious energy on empty ruins. While they were distracted, human stealth corvettes, painted black and shaped like blades, slipped past the edge of the system. They moved without active sensors, without engine flares, riding the gravity wake of asteroids. Their mission was simple: find the Krell command ships and cut off the head. Aboard the UF Dagger, Lieutenant Chris Ruiz watched his display. "We're in position," he whispered. No detection. His crew didn't cheer. They just nodded and armed their weapons. The attack came without warning. Railgun slugs punched through the hull of the Krell flagship's bridge. Missile pods opened silently, launching smart warheads that homed in on engine signatures. Within seconds, 3 Krell command vessels were crippled, their comms dead, their leaders dead or trapped. Chaos spread through the Krell fleet. Without orders, their ships drifted, confused. Some fired blindly, others tried to retreat. Back on Epsilon Kappa, Morgan emerged from the tunnels. The bombardment had stopped. The sky was clearing. She raised her binoculars. Krell dropships were descending. Thinking the city was broken, the humans defeated. They were wrong. Every street, every alley, every collapsed building had been turned into a kill zone. Gravitic mines lay hidden under rubble. Auto turrets were buried in basements, their barrels aimed at choke points. And human soldiers, rested, fed, and ready, waited in perfect silence. The first dropship landed in the plaza. Ramps dropped. Krell warriors charged out, roaring. They never saw the mines. The explosion flipped the dropship onto its side. Before the survivors could stand, turrets opened fire from 3 directions. Then Morgan's voice crackled over hidden speakers, calm and clear. "Welcome to Epsilon Kappa." What followed was not a battle. It was a cleanup. Krell warriors, used to overwhelming force, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Human squads hit them from behind, cut their comms, and picked them off in pairs. No heroics, no duels. Just efficient, relentless pressure until the enemy broke. By midday, the last Krell dropship was burning. Aboard the Vanguard, Colonel Pike received the final report. All enemy ground forces neutralized. No civilian casualties. "Our losses, 2 wounded, non-critical." He nodded. "Good." Tyel, the conquered observer, stood nearby, pale with awe. "You turned their strength against them," she said. "They thought fire would win. You gave them emptiness." Pike looked at her. "War isn't about what you have. It's about what the enemy thinks you have. We let them believe they were winning, right up until they weren't." Tel thought about that. On her world, war was open, direct, honorable. You met your enemy face to face. You fought with pride. But here the humans had won by thinking 3 steps ahead. By using deception not as trickery but as a tool, like a wrench or a radio. She watched as human engineers began clearing debris, not to rebuild yet, but to prepare for the next possible attack. Soldiers checked their gear, shared water, and rested in shifts. No one celebrated. No one even smiled, because the job wasn't finished. Later, Tel sat with Morgan near a field kitchen. The smell of stew filled the air. "How do you keep going?" Teal asked. "After all this?" Morgan stirred her cup. "We train for it. We plan for it. And when it comes, we do what we're trained to do." "But doesn't it scare you?" "Sure," Morgan said. But fear doesn't stop you from doing your job. It just reminds you to pay attention. Tail looked out over the ruined city. Smoke still rose in places. But already humans were moving with purpose, securing zones, marking hazards, helping each other. There was no panic, no despair, just work. She finally understood. The humans weren't fearless. They were professional, and professionalism, she realized, was far more terrifying than any roar or blade, because it never tired. It never bragged. It simply kept going, until the mission was done, and the Krell, for all their fury, had no answer for that. The Day the Galaxy Realized What a Human Professional Army Truly Is, Part 4. The Krell High Warlord stood alone in the shattered remains of his command deck. Smoke curled from broken consoles. Emergency lights flickered red. His fleet was in ruins. Half his ships were dead in space. The rest were scattered, confused, running. And the humans, they hadn't even raised their voices. He had expected a fight. He got a lesson. Now, with his pride burning hotter than his engines, he made his final decision. He would not retreat. He would not surrender. He would burn Epsilon Kappa to glass and take the humans with him, even if it cost him everything. His remaining warships gathered in a tight formation above the planet. Their plasma cores glowed white-hot. This would not be a bombardment. It would be an erasure. But Colonel Daniel Pike had already seen this coming. Days ago, when the first Krell ships arrived, Pike had ordered every civilian off the planet. Not just the obvious ones, farmers, shopkeepers, children, but even the last stragglers hiding in basements or remote outposts. Human shuttles ran nonstop, ferrying people to waiting transports in high orbit. By the time the Krell launched their final assault, Epsilon Kappa was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of anything worth saving. The city that still stood was a stage. Every building, every street, every ruin had been rigged. Not with bombs meant to destroy, but with traps meant to kill. Gravitic mines waited under rubble. Smart turrets hid in sewer grates. Drone nests sat in hollowed-out walls ready to swarm. And deep underground, in reinforced bunkers, human soldiers waited. Captain Lisa Morgan crouched in a command post beneath what had once been the city library. Her team was small, just 6 now, but they were rested, armed, and ready. On her display, red blips showed Krell dropships descending. They thought the humans were broken. They thought the city was theirs for the taking. They were wrong. As the first dropship touched down in the central plaza, Morgan gave a single hand signal. The trap sprung, gravitic mines activated, crushing the dropship's landing gear and flipping it onto its side. Before the Krell inside could react, turrets opened fire from 3 directions, stitching precise lines of plasma through the hull. Then, from the shadows, human squads moved in, silent, fast, and lethal. No shouting, no warnings. Just clean, efficient kills. The Krell warriors, bred for rage and brute force, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand and face them. Every time they turned, fire came from behind. Every time they charged, the ground exploded beneath them. They were strong, fast, and furious, but they were also predictable. And predictability in war was a death sentence. Morgan's team cleared block after block. They used the ruins like a weapon, funneling Krell into kill zones, cutting off retreats, and vanishing before the enemy could regroup. When a Krell berserker smashed through a wall, roaring, a railgun round punched through his chest from a rooftop 2 blocks away. When a squad tried to flank, they walked straight into a drone ambush that blinded them and left them easy targets. It was not a battle. It was a demonstration of control. High above, the Krell flagship prepared to fire its main cannon. The warlord watched the surface feeds, waiting for screams, for fire, for proof that he had won. Instead, he saw his warriors falling, one by one, without glory, without even a proper fight. Then his sensors screamed. Human stealth corvettes, small, dark, and deadly, had slipped past his outer defenses. They fired not at hulls, but at weak points, engine couplings, sensor arrays, bridge viewports. Missiles struck with surgical precision. Explosions bloomed across his flagship's hull. The warlord roared in fury, but it was too late. His ship listed hard to starboard. Life support failed. Communications died. Around him, his officers panicked, shouting orders that no one could hear. On the planet below, Morgan received a message from orbit. Flagship is down. Rest of the fleet is breaking formation. She nodded. Good, let's finish this. Her team moved faster now. The Krell were losing heart. Some tried to surrender, The humans accepted, but only after disarming them and locking them in secure pens. No harm, no revenge, just procedure. By nightfall, the last Krell dropship was burning in the plaza. Silence returned to Epsilon Kappa. Aboard the UEF Vanguard, Colonel Pike finally stepped onto the main deck. He looked at the view screen. The Krell fleet was gone, some destroyed, most fleeing. The planet was safe. The civilians were safe. The mission was complete. Tail, the conquered observer, approached him. She looked tired, shaken, but clear-eyed. "You didn't just beat them," she said. "You broke them." Pike didn't smile. "We did our job, but you could have talked. You could have warned them." "No," Pike said. "The Krell don't understand words. They only understand force. And we showed them what real force looks like, not noise, not rage, but control." Tail thought about that. She had watched the humans fight with no emotion, no hatred, just cold, clear purpose. They didn't enjoy killing. They didn't fear it either. They simply did what needed to be done, and did it well. That was the true terror of the human army. Later, Morgan stood on the edge of the ruined city, looking up at the stars. The air smelled of smoke and rain. Behind her, her soldiers packed gear, checked wounds, and prepared to leave. There would be no victory parade, no songs, just a quiet return home. Tull joined her. "What happens now?" Morgan shrugged. "We go back, rest, train, wait for the next call. And if someone else attacks, then we'll be ready." Tull looked at the burning dropship in the distance. The Krell had come with fire and fury. The humans had answered with silence and steel, and in the end, silence had won. Morgan turned to leave. "War isn't about being the strongest," she said quietly. "It's about being the smartest, the calmest, and the most ready. That's what makes us professionals." Then she walked away, boots crunching on broken glass, already thinking about the next mission. And the galaxy, watching from the shadows, finally understood. Never mistake human quiet for weakness, because when the professionals speak, it's already too late to run. The day the galaxy realized what a human professional army truly is. Part 5. The Krell Dominion sent its answer 3 days after the battle. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with a single message carried by a neutral courier ship. It was short, blunt, and signed by the new Krell High Council. They would withdraw all forces from human space. They would not attack again. And they asked only one thing, that humanity never come for them. Colonel Daniel Pike read the message once, then deleted it. He did not celebrate. He did not even comment. He simply turned to his operations officer and said, "Log it, file it. Then stand down the alert." Across Epsilon Kappa, human soldiers began packing up. Tents came down. Equipment was loaded onto shuttles. Wounded were carried to medical transports. There were no speeches, no medals handed out, no cameras flashing. Just quiet work, done with the same care as everything else. Captain Lisa Morgan stood near the edge of the ruined city, watching the last of the evacuation shuttles lift off. Her armor was scuffed, her boots covered in ash, but her eyes were calm. Behind her, the planet was empty again. No soldiers, no civilians, just wind moving through broken streets. The job was done. Tael, the conquered observer, walked up beside her. She looked different now, less curious, more thoughtful. "They're really leaving," she said. "The Krell, they're scared of you." Morgan shook her head. "They're not scared of us. They're scared of what happens if they push us again. There's a difference." Tael didn't answer right away. She had spent weeks watching humans fight, heal, plan, and endure. She had seen them treat enemies with respect, move without noise, and win without boasting. It wasn't bravery in the way her people understood it. It was something colder, sharper, something built on training, trust, and total belief in the mission. Back on the UF Vanguard, Colonel Pike met with the Concord delegation for the first and last time. They came with questions, with offers of alliance, with requests for military advisors. Pike listened politely, then gave his answer. "We don't want your treaties," he said. "We don't want your praise. We just want to be left alone. But if someone hurts our people, we will respond. Not because we like fighting, but because it's our duty." The Concord leaders exchanged glances. They had expected demands, maybe even threats. Instead, they got a warning wrapped in calm. And that was far more powerful. Within a week, the human fleet left Epsilon Kappa. The planet would be sealed off for years, too damaged to live on, too dangerous to visit. But it would be remembered. Not as a battlefield, but as the place where the galaxy finally saw what humanity truly was. On Earth, no one threw a parade. News reports mentioned the successful defense of a distant colony in brief segments between weather and sports. Schools didn't add new lessons. Politicians didn't give grand speeches. Life went on as usual. Captain Morgan returned to her home in Colorado. She hugged her daughter, helped fix the leaky kitchen sink, and took her dog for a walk in the hills. That evening, she sat on the porch watching the sunset, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. No one knew what she had done. No one asked, and she didn't tell. Colonel Pike retired to a small farm in Oregon. He woke at dawn, fed the chickens, checked the fences, and read old paper books under the shade of an oak tree. Sometimes neighbors would wave and ask how he was. He'd smile and say, "Fine, thanks." He never mentioned Epsilon Kappa, but across the stars everything had changed. The Concorde called an emergency summit. Species that once laughed at human broadcasts now studied them carefully. Military academies added new courses on human tactical doctrine. Diplomats warned their leaders, never provoke Earth. Not because humans were cruel, but because they were consistent. They didn't start wars. But when forced into one, they didn't stop until it was truly over. A young alien historian on the planet Vexus wrote a paper that would become famous. "The humans do not fight for glory," she wrote. "They fight to finish the job. And when professionals finish a job, there is nothing left to argue about." Years passed. New colonies grew. Trade routes expanded. The Krell kept their word and stayed far from human space. The conquered treated Earth with quiet respect, never pushing, never testing. And humanity? They kept training. In hidden bases on Mars, in orbital stations above Luna, in jungles and deserts back on Earth, soldiers practiced. They ran drills in zero gravity. They simulated alien weapons. They studied old battles, looking for mistakes, for ways to do better next time, because they knew something the galaxy had only just learned. Peace wasn't given. It was protected, and protection required professionals. One evening, long after Epsilon Kappa had faded from headlines, Tail stood on a balcony overlooking her home city. She watched children play in the square below, laughing, running, safe. She thought of Morgan's quiet voice, Pike's steady eyes, and the way human soldiers moved like shadows with purpose. She finally understood why humanity had never needed to shout. Their actions spoke loudly enough, and the galaxy was still listening.